All right, Adam, episode 125 of Bad Wolf Radio. We
Wow.
are we are nearing the end of the year. We are on our third David Tennant special, and we have a Christmas special coming up in a couple weeks. It's been a big month for Doctor Who.
Yeah. Yeah. And us, buck 25 for episodes. That's pretty wild. But yeah, it feels like a good episode to have this nice one and a quarter podcast.
I think we have a lot to talk about. This was a little bit longer of an episode of Doctor Who, the Giggle.
The
This is
giggle.
the kind of the finale, I guess you could say, of the three-part special. It does feel like a three-parter. I know that each story kind of has its own thing, but they all definitely connect. To me, it is kind of like a three-part finale in a lot of ways, or a three-part special.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. I think now that we have the three of them to look back on, there's definitely these linkages between the episodes that really do tie the three specials together. Although they are more of capsule stories, each one, they each deal with their own storyline, villain, it has a conclusion. There are threads that tie them together. So yeah, three-part special.
And we commented last episode about, were these specials worthy? Or do they feel like specials? We haven't had multiple doctors yet. What are they going to give us in the final special that's going to make it feel like it was a special?
Yeah.
I guess we can talk about if we thought they accomplished that or not as we get a little bit more into the story. But let's talk about this one. They kind of so this is the Giggle. Once again, written by Russell T. Davis. Still up for debate. Nobody's corrected us yet, but I have heard it pronounced Davis a couple more times. So I'm leaning toward the fact that we're pronouncing it wrong. This was
Here's what we can do. You can go with Davis, I'll go with Davies. We'll split the difference.
directed by Chanya Button. And did you know this was story number 303 of Doctor Who? Somebody's keeping track.
I
Uh,
did not.
the
I did not know.
303rd story, or at least according to the TARDIS wiki, this is the 303rd story of Doctor Who. That's pretty
Okay.
crazy that there's that
That
many.
is.
And that means with only 125 episodes, we have not even covered half of them.
Yeah, the math there is kind of confusing me right now, but we'll just roll with it.
Well, we started pretty late. I think our first Doctor was technically Capaldi because we had kind of caught the 50th anniversary, right? We jumped in
We
then.
did we did yeah, yeah,
I mean,
Smith.
we've
We
jumped
had
back and
Smith.
done a couple like
Yeah.
retrospective reviews of older episodes, but I think our regular reviews started with Chibnall. Well,
Yeah.
started with the 50th anniversary.
Right.
So that means we've been doing it 10 years. For a
Yep.
60th anniversary, we started with the 50th.
Yep.
You guys don't care about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Doctor Who. This one starts out in 1925 in Soho. Where's Soho? I hear that all the time.
Southampton. Southampton?
Okay.
South.
So that's England?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
It's
As
yeah.
Soho, when I hear Soho, I've heard it so
New
many times.
York.
And I was like, is that New York? Is that, no. Okay. So it's in England. Got it. I mean, I could have looked that up, but I figured you
I
know.
mean, there's Sohos all over the place, but this one is definitely in London area, the city of Westminster, part of West End of London. So
All right. So we
that's
get
where this
this
Soho is.
we get this guy walks into the toy maker's shop. We have seen the toy maker's shop in a lot of the kind of leaked stuff that came out. I know we talked about
Yeah.
it. We're getting to see it full on now. We saw it in the trailer even, I think. But we have this guy walks into the shop. We get our first shot at the guest star, Neil
Yeah.
Patrick
Neil
Harris.
Patrick Harris.
So the big American star that's come to Doctor Who to save the specials, maybe? No, not really. But he's like laying it on thick with this German accent, which I was kind of like, is this how he's going to talk the whole time? Which he kind of did almost. He kind of switched out of the accent a few times, but it was very like I feel like if I was German, I would have been annoyed even more, like almost borderline offended by how bad this German
Yeah.
accent was.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to get into it, but that was actually something that was called out after the episode aired. Just the history of the character, the toy maker,
Hmm.
and how he in the past he was hindsight, right? He's viewed as being a very racist character. And
The portrayal of like
Davies,
the
the
character
portrayal of.
themselves. I don't know. I haven't seen it. The character themselves wasn't necessarily that way,
Right.
right? It was more just the portrayal what had some stereotypes that now
Correct.
today would be seen a little bit differently. Yeah.
Correct. And Davies gave an interview and he basically said, hey, if we were to just ignore this, then people would be like, don't you know? Don't you realize? And so he said that they intentionally leaned into it because he's a villain. A villain does bad things. They aren't saying this is a good thing, but they did lean back into that just for the sake of, hey, he's a villain. We need to recognize that this is who the character was in the past. We're not going to change it in the present. We're not going to, in his words, whitewash the character. So they kept it in, which was it's a choice. It's a choice, and it definitely rang true throughout the episode.
Right, right. So I guess this character, one of this character's traits is that he likes to mock human accents, maybe, and
Yeah,
or
the way that Davies put it was that he uses it as a weapon. He's not from this planet, and so whatever role he plays, he takes on, and he uses the accents as a way to emphasize his otherness, his evilness. It's a weapon in how he uses it.
it definitely made
It's
him
interesting.
it definitely made him feel villainous. Like I get it, it
Oh yeah,
worked. Like because you're not seeing it as, oh, this is Neil Patrick Harris just doesn't know how to do a German accent. Like that's not how it came across to me. It was he was
no,
purposely doing a bad German accent, almost to
yep,
sound in some ways offensive. Kind of like, hey, this is how silly you sound, you humans, kind of thing.
yeah.
And so yeah, it definitely worked with it being a villainous character.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. It was interesting though. It really was throughout it because it is it is a caricature of an accent, right? Like throwing in added syllables and extra letters and all this other stuff.
yeah.
It is a caricature of the accent.
So, had you heard of this whole thing with Stooky Bill and the first TV image and all? I didn't know. This isn't part of my, anything I remember learning. So this was all news to me. I guess it's real. Not this isn't some kind of fictional version. This is based on something that really happened, or at least as far as Stooky Bill was a real puppet that was really filmed
Yeah,
and was the first TV image, right?
with Baird. Yep.
Okay.
It's something that I have heard of in the past, but it's one of those things that it's like random Jeopardy knowledge that is kicking around in the back of your head, and then you don't pay any attention to it until something like this comes up, and it's like, oh dang, yeah, I do know this.
So the first TV image was horror.
I mean, pretty much,
Because
right?
that was like one of the creepiest things I think if that was the my first introduction to television, I might be like, this might not be for me. That was, I mean, the way they did it was maybe, kind of over the top, but like the explanation that it was too hot, for a human to be sitting there, so they had to get a puppet, and that it literally caught fire, had real human hair, which is another villainous thing that we get introduced
Oh
with the toy
yeah,
maker, how he mentions that, oh yeah, this is actually real hair and it's from someone who doesn't need it anymore because, I killed them. He doesn't say that, but he implies,
right.
that this, and the guy is super creeped out by him right away. We get this sense of this toy maker being almost like master-esque. Like he's just a bad guy. There's not going to be any kind of, oh, I like, he's just a misunderstood bad guy. No, he's
Oh,
an evil entity that we're going to be dealing with.
oh, absolutely. And like, yeah, from the very get-go, the episode strikes those chords of, again, this could potentially be pretty disturbing. I watched part of it while my kids were out on a bike ride, and my wife was on the couch behind me, and she was just like, she was supposed to be reading, and her book was not in front of her face, and she was just like, Adam, what is this? What's going on? And then as soon as the kids walked through the door, I had to stop it because there were elements of this. Stooky Bill is frightening. Like he is everything about that 1960s puppet 1920s puppet that you don't want any part of. Um, it
Yeah,
is
and
it's disturbing.
we'll see later on that Stooky Bill's family is even creepier than
Oh
Stooky Bill,
yes.
which I'm
Yes.
sure some of that was creative license as far as those puppets even existing. But yeah, that was definitely interesting. All right, so we get the introduction to the toy maker right at the very beginning, and then it jumps back into kind of what they left us with the doctor walking through all this chaos, trying to figure out what's going on. He like stops this guy from getting hit by a car. The guy kind of explains that everybody thinks they're right, kind of
Yep.
situation. Um, I did notice that Wilf is not really in this episode. Like we get a quick scene where you can see him, you know, in the wheelchair and everything, and they say, "Hey, you know, take care of him," but you never see his face. Bernard Cribbins must have just only been there for the one episode, and maybe for these
Yes.
shots he was no longer available. But yeah, so we really only did get one episode with Wilf. This is they quickly, you know, moved him along, and then the doctor kind of moves on without him.
Yeah. I mean, he is off screen at the end of the episode, so you know that Wolf is still part of the family, but unfortunately Bernard Cribbins was by this time he had shot his final scene.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I was kind of hoping we get a little bit more, honestly, because we had seen him really quickly at the end of
right.
that episode. I'm like, oh, we'll get a little bit more because he's still with the doctor when that episode ends. But then they kind of had to, I guess, who knows how much they had to reshoot or adjust because
Yeah.
of him passing. So, yeah, they had to kind of move things along. So the doctor does briefly run into the toy maker, kind of in the street, doesn't know
Yep.
anything, but then kind of gets a second look at him and it's like, oh, this guy, something's not right here.
Right. I mean, it's all these scenes like being able to post together, link together all the behind the scene leaks, the pictures that we saw. Neil Patrick Harris as the toy maker in the top hat and the tails dancing through the street, the doctor and Neil Patrick
Mm-hmm.
Harris dancing together. Like even the toy shop, being able to piece these things together now. Number one, some of the stuff doesn't at all happen or appear in the order or where I thought it was going to be. It is really interesting that a lot of the leaks happened pretty much at the start of the episode. It's not very far into the episode that it's like, oh, okay, now we're in untouched territory. We don't have pictures of these things, of these scenes, of
Yeah.
this taking place.
I think the
Um,
leaks, it was probably when they're filming kind of more out in the open in certain
yeah,
areas and they just had to film that way. So all this leaks, you're right, like all the leaks kind of seem to happen in,
first 10 minutes.
yeah, just in a matter of, you know, the very beginning of the episode. So they really, although we talked about them pretty extensively, it's not really much of the story and it didn't really
Yeah,
spoil anything, right? Like other
no,
than
not
some
at all.
characters appearing, but that kind
Right.
of all was released before the episodes aired anyways.
Yeah. But with all the chaos going on, and you have that uh semi-blurred visage of the toy maker just standing there watching Donna and the doctor as unit pulls up
Mm-hmm.
and he just stands there and watches and waves. And he is the only one in that situation that is under control. Everybody else is in utter chaos, and he's just standing there, somewhat serene in a creepy way, as he should, in the midst of all of it.
Yep. And the unit then whisks them away to Avengers Tower, and
I mean, that's
the
pretty much what it is, right? It's
right? Is it
Avengers
the same
Tower.
set? Like it
It's
literally looks just like Avengers Tower. I thought maybe
right.
there's just like, oh, maybe they reused some digital elements from Marvel, or maybe that was part
Yeah.
of Disney's deal when they started on Disney Plus. They're like, hey, we'll give you the digital elements you can use. But it was so similar. Now I guess Avengers Tower is supposed to be in New York City, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I guess Unit would not be in New York City. But
No.
yeah, there it was interesting just the similarities. Even my son was watching it with me and was like, "Oh, look, it's Avengers Tower."
This is also where I was like, okay, we've hit special 60th anniversary special level because the TARDIS is airlifted by a helicopter. It's
Oh, yeah.
I distinctly
That's what you
mentioned
wanted?
last time. It's like the 50th anniversary. It's not an anniversary. It's not a special unless the TARDIS gets lifted by a helicopter. Sure enough, within the first 15 minutes, I'm laughing out loud because it's like, oh, we have the TARDIS getting airlifted to unit. This is a special at this point.
Yeah. And Kate Lethbridge Stewart kind of shows up in specials recently too. So she's kind of
Yep.
that character that you know when she shows up, things are important. Things are,
Right.
you know,
Things are heating up.
yes. So yeah, he shows up and she comes out and hugs him. That kind of the gravity of the situation, you know, that she even just doesn't know how to deal with everything that's going on in this everything that's going on with this craziness with the people. And then he runs into an old companion. I'm still okay
Melanie?
using that word, companion. Uh,
Yeah.
we could talk about it, but
Donna
yeah,
doesn't want us to.
Melanie or Mel. I do remember just in my classic Doctor research or watching through some of the classic episodes, coming across her story. So it wasn't, although I didn't recognize her, I know she was in that like support group that they did
Yeah.
at the end of the last specials. But she didn't really get a lot of screen time there. A lot of the people that showed up in that, just had one line or whatever. So this
Yeah.
is like her coming back for real because now she's actually part of the action, using her skills. But she's not, I don't think, a super notable companion that, a lot of us modern fans would even know unless you did
Right.
go and do the research.
Yeah, to me, other than her just making appearances, the support group and the doctor's acknowledgement, that I was like, oh, okay, she's notable. Outside of
Yeah.
that, though, to your point, unless you did some digging into Classic Who, um,
The
yeah,
doctor was
she
way
didn't
more
jump out.
excited to see her than I was.
Yeah,
I just
that's
had to
that's
take his
safe to
word
say.
for it. I was like, oh, okay,
Right.
she's important. They did say the whole companion thing did come up. I just wanted to note it because I read an article that somebody was like, "Oh, this is a big moment for Doctor Who because they're going to move past the term companion now that they made that commentary." And I'm like, "Where have you been? They did that when Jodie Whittaker was the Doctor and she said fam and my friends, and they've already they've already talked about the fact that companion as a term,
Yeah.
not that it's problematic. I don't think it really is, but it could be seen as like an old way of kind of referring to these people and maybe a little bit demeaning.
Yeah.
But I don't know. For me as a fan, I don't think it's that big a deal that, whatever term you want to use. If they want to say friends, or if they want to say fam, or they want to say companion, and it all means the same thing to me. And
Yeah.
it's just funny to me that this person wrote this article that was like it was almost like this groundbreaking, like, oh, finally, look at Doctor Who's finally got to the point where I'm like, no, we've been talking about this for like 3 years now.
Right. Exactly. It's something that Chibnall went to great lengths to allow Whitaker's doctor to kind of flesh out and make changes to and adjust. And to your point, companion, I mean, maybe there is some aspects to it, and I am not tied to a name, a term whatsoever. To me, it's more of a title. It represents a position that you hold alongside the doctor. Um, but again, I'm not tied to it. So if this is the one time that we definitively put the term companion to rest, that's fine. I just need to be told what we're calling Ruby moving forward.
No, this person's point in the article was that the term companion implies that the person is less than the doctor. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, they are.
That's
I'm
kind of the point.
sorry. If I
Right.
was in there with the doctor, I'd be a companion. I'm not the
Yeah.
doctor. I'm not at that level. That's why he's the main character. So
Right.
it's completely
Yep.
fine if you have the main character and his companion. That's the same thing
And
as
his sidekick.
his sidekick, companion, whatever you want to say. Uh, Sherlock Holmes has Dr. Watson, right? Like
Right.
he's not equal to him. We all know that. That's kind of the point, right?
Right. Yep.
The companion is the Watson to the Sherlock. And
Yeah.
so let's not pretend otherwise. I don't know. To me, it's just such a weird thing for people to get hung up on, but I
Yep.
digress.
Understood.
All right. We meet the Vlinks, which I thought maybe was something that had happened in Doctor Who before. I'm like, oh, maybe they're bringing
And
back some character, some alien that I've never heard of. Apparently, this is a completely original character
yep.
that Davies just thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Let's drop this character with no explanation as to who they are.
No explanation
Yeah.
whatsoever. It was funny to watch some of the behind the scenes stuff because even Tennant was like, yeah, we have the Vlinks and no explanation of who he is, where he comes from. Maybe he'll show up again in the future. We don't know, but he's there and the doctor just moves past it like it's nothing.
Is it just
Uh,
me? They're definitely setting up for a unit show, right?
oh, I
So many
mean, even
characters. We got
yeah,
Mel comes back and now she's working for Unit. Then we get Donna gets a job offer from Unit. Then we have
yep,
Vlinks, who's very thought out. He's a very detailed character to just have.
well designed.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. The time it took them to design that character, that's not just a one off. They're using him again.
Right.
Um,
Shirley, you have Shirley,
Shirley,
who
yeah,
has been well-defined character up to this point.
yeah. So
Um,
they're definitely at least setting the groundwork for the potential that if they did do a
yeah.
unit show, that you already have a cast. You already have
Oh,
a cast set.
yep. And there's
Not to
one more
mention,
character
not to
that we'll
mention
get
what
to at the end of it.
what
Yep.
we will talk about at the end that could even solidify it more. But
Oh,
yeah,
yep.
so I was definitely getting that feeling as especially when Donna got the job offer, which I love that
Right.
scene when she's like, "How much does it pay?" or whatever, and she's like 60K, and she's like, "Oh, I'll make it 120 or was it 120? I forget.
It's like
To double it
150.
or
Yeah.
whatever she said, but like it was so Donna to be like, how much does it pay? That's what she cares about.
Yep.
So
120 plus 5 weeks of holiday.
yeah, that was very
Pretty sweet
very in
deal.
character for her. But
Yeah.
so at this point, it was definitely interesting. Like they're trying to figure out what's going on. They have these armband things called the Z-Dex that's
Yep.
making it so they don't get affected by it like everyone else. Anyone that's traveled in the TARDIS for long periods of time tends to be immune to this, so that's why the Doctor and Donna and others aren't affected by it. We get a little bit of a demo from Kate
Yep.
about what happens when you don't wear the Z-Dex, and it's pretty intense. I don't know if that was just like her real feelings coming out, or if that was just like almost. I don't. It was if that's really how she feels about all those people. I don't know how they
Yeah.
could still be
Right.
friends after. So I don't know,
Right.
like if that's
Exactly.
just we all say dumb things, you know, but it did feel like wow, she really went pretty far with some of the things that she said there. Hopefully, that's not really how her brain thinks.
Yeah, and it seems like most people excused it as just a state of paranoia because even as she was going through it, right, the more she talked, the more heightened it got. As she was like even processing additional details as she was going along. I think that was also one of those commentary moments just about
Clearly,
how individuals tend to slowly go more and more and more and amp up, and paranoia feeds paranoia, which feeds paranoia, which feeds paranoia. Um,
right?
to the point of even saying, Shirley doesn't need a wheelchair. I've seen her walk. It's those types of things that it's like, okay, wait a minute. And then she refused to put the Z-Dex back on, which the moment she took it off, I was like, that's a bad decision. Something's gonna go downhill here. I was actually surprised that they got one back on her. But
Yeah. Oh yeah. Um, yeah. It definitely was a commentary moment. Doctor Who does not shy away from an
no,
opportunity,
absolutely not.
to get up on a soapbox every once in a while, and this was that moment. And they actually kind of expounded upon it later in a conversation that the Doctor's having with the master,
Right.
sorry, like Flip.
The toy maker.
Basically, he's very master like. Really, he could
Oh,
be the master.
absolutely.
Like he could definitely just
Yeah.
be another version of the master, the way that he acted. But yeah, he had a conversation where basically the toy maker admitted that that was the whole point. Was he was this is how humans, they think they're right and they say their thing, and then he's like talking about cancel culture at one point, and then he's just kind of
Yep.
like saying that's he basically just took down the barriers and just let it go. So it was definitely a commentary on kind of our social state right now, how things are,
Yeah.
and how people can get a little crazy.
And even with the toy maker's explanation, it dare I say it seemed fairly balanced. It didn't seem like Davies was commenting on one side or another, right? Because this is one of those issues that there typically are viewed to be sides. Davies kind of cut it right down the middle with addressing some of the things that he talked about. It really came down to individuals, not necessarily groups,
Which you almost have to, because if you
right?
that's your commentary, then you're kind of doing it yourself.
Exactly.
If you're really one side or the other, like so yeah, I do think it was kind of the commentary from the writer Davies is
Yeah.
basically saying, hey, when we go crazy, it doesn't matter if you're left wing, right wing,
Yep.
whatever, we get crazy both ways,
Yeah.
like, and so I think he was just kind of saying like we all need to chill. It's
Right.
kind
I
of
mean,
the
pretty
message I
much.
got. That's kind
I
of
mean,
the
that's
message I
what the
got from it.
Z-Dex did, right? It calmed everything down. It made you even keel.
Got rid of those
Uh,
spikes.
yep.
Yes, so they figure out it's this laugh, the certain tune. This is where they started to lose me. There's a satellite that's being utilized for this.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
so how it breaks down is right because of the spikes that were taking place
mhm.
within Kate Lethbridge Stewart, right? They mapped that out to be like, oh, these are notes. And then those notes matched up with the giggle. The whole satellite thing, that just so happened to be like once that satellite went in place, everything was finally connected. It completed the chain that connected all devices around the world to one global network.
Maybe I missed.
Um,
Okay, you're explaining it better than the show, because I was a little lost on that, and they probably did explain it just fine. But yeah, I was kind of thinking, yeah, it didn't really connect for me as to like the purpose of the satellite. But now that you're saying
yeah.
that, I'm remembering that in the dialogue. So okay, so that's what it
I mean,
was.
there's a lot going on.
It wasn't like the toy maker was relying on the satellite by any means, or
No.
maybe he knew the
Well,
satellite would be the moment when things would connect. So maybe he kind of was
yeah,
relying on it, but it's not like he created this, or he's not the one that took over the satellite or anything like that.
right. Yeah.
Okay. Uh,
Everything was already in place.
but the explanation of it being the first TV signal, but because that was the first TV signal, now it's like, it's on every screen throughout time and history because
Right.
I don't know why, because Stooky Bill's clever.
Yeah.
It just,
Stooky Bill's more clever than you all.
yeah,
Yep.
I don't think that was, yeah. That explanation
That,
to me was a little weird. That was a very Doctor Who moment where I was kind of like, all right, let's just go with it because there's really not
yeah.
a great explanation. And it felt almost like the Weeping Angels, how they're in everybody's eye, you
Yeah.
know, that kind of thing. Where you're like, okay, that's weird, but okay, I'll just go with it. Apparently
And,
this,
and,
and it's a
and that's
sound.
some,
And didn't they not have sound in that first image? Wasn't that the whole thing? Like the
yeah.
giggle wasn't part of it.
Yeah, you're
That
right.
came later.
That is,
That's
that is
about, yeah.
interesting.
I don't know. I need to do my research, I guess, on everything that went down with that whole first signal. But I didn't think that the explanation made a lot of. It wasn't satisfactory to me to understand what
Yeah.
was going on. It was more like, all right, they're not going to really explain it, so I'm just going to continue to go with this.
I think that's definitely one of those instances where it's smoke and mirrors, right? Like the doctor's enthusiasm and the doctor running around to every screen and Stooky Bill is appearing. It's like at that point, you get lost in the woods of what's actually taking place and you don't have time to focus on an individual tree. It's just like, oh my goodness, Stooky Bill is in my phone. Like his face is everywhere. And the image itself and the giggle. I mean, honestly, the giggle was disturbing. Like
No,
those.
so much
Oh
was
yeah.
disturbing. Stooky Bill almost had some like Saul vibes,
Oh yeah.
right? Like it maybe
Absolutely.
Saul. I don't know a lot about the Saul movies, but maybe Saul did that on purpose. Maybe they were trying to imitate Stooky Bill too. But yeah, as soon as I saw that, I was like, this looks like Saul.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I, those ventriloquist dummies growing up, like those were always freaky. There's some howdy doody ones that are just messed up. Yeah, Stooky Bill messed. He was legitimately frightening.
There was an the kind of anti-vax commentary too, where they're like, I'm anti-Zdex, and I was just like, oh man, we're covering it all.
I mean, they're trying to monitor us. It's
Yes, yeah. All this conspiracy theories and stuff. Yeah. It was
yeah.
definitely there was a lot of commentary in this one.
Yep.
Um, so the doctor and Donna decide to travel to back to 1925. They're gonna go find, this is where Stooky Bill, this is where it all started. They go back there. The doctor sees the shop. Oh, where'd the puppet come from? We get the confrontation with the toy maker,
Right.
the juggling, all of that. Uh, and then the doctor and Donna kind of chase him into, I guess, what looks like it's going to be the back of the shop. And now they're in part of like the whole realm. So, the idea behind the toy maker is that he is this being that the doctor has faced before. And we all, anyone that's looked in or done a little bit of research in Doctor Who knows that this is a character that faced off against the first Doctor
Right. Yep.
and kind of
And
from another dimension.
right. Doesn't deal with the norms of our reality, but is in the realm of play.
Right.
The only thing that matters are the games. which
Yeah.
again sounds very much like Saw. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah,
Want
I
to
guess
play a
that's
game?
true. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I had mentioned it before how in Star Trek there's a character called Q, that does kind of, he can kind of alter reality and stuff and kind of mess with it. They definitely didn't go down that road as much as I thought they might. This is definitely much more about games. Like
Yeah.
you can kind of trick him because he's bound to the rules of the games, whereas Q
Yeah.
was more of a character that could kind of just basically make you see whatever he wanted, and kind of, he was just almost like this omniscient god. Whereas I didn't get that sense. The Toymaker, although threatening, never felt like he was, it didn't feel like he was gonna do anything, or had the, even maybe didn't even have the ability to do certain things. Like he did seem bound. Like he did seem like he was kind of limited in what he could really, what kind of havoc he could wreak.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely got the sense that he limited himself in those moments. And maybe it's not him limiting himself, but he was limited to the game. And so Earth was fair play because on Earth, humans love games. And the doctor definitely didn't seem too excited to engage with the toy maker because the doctor likes things in order. There's rules, there's reasons, there's logic. And a lot of times in games, depending on the game, it's just chance. And you can't control chance. So there was that opposition there. There was that friction point. And I think that's where when the doctor finally gets around to challenging the toy maker to a game, that's where it gets interesting because it's like, okay, the doctor is just at the end of it. He is just taking a chance and he's just playing. I mean, the game that he chose, just splitting a deck of cards. That's that's a heck of a game to choose. You have no control over that whatsoever. Um, it was
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, and the doctor knew, I guess, when he invoked the rule of like the best of three,
Yeah,
because he had
yeah,
already
yeah, yeah.
beaten. So he kind of had, at least he had a one
A
chance to get
fallback.
it wrong, because
Right.
he had already beaten him once. And so I beat you once. All right, now you beat me in the card cutting, but I still have one more chance because it's best of three. And then it
Yeah.
was almost like the toy master was like, crap. Like I hope you didn't remember that. Like he
Foiled again.
yeah, he had to follow the rule of the game. You know,
Yeah.
we did, so we kind of skipped over. There was definitely a moment. There was a couple moments in that like almost weird dimension where they're running through the house and the doors and kind of getting
Yeah.
separated. The doctor runs into the guy who bought the puppet, but he
Poor
becomes a
Charlie.
puppet, and then the doctor becomes a puppet. And it's
Yeah.
just this really creepy scene. And then Donna's scene just tops it because she runs into the family, the puppet wife and the puppet babies, but they're trying to
Yes.
like eat her, and that's all super creepy. And that part, I think that was the scariest part in the whole episode, was the Donna scene with the
With Stooky
puppets.
Sue and the Stooky babies,
Yeah,
Bobbies.
yeah, the bobbies. That was
It's, I mean,
I mean, we talked about the last episode, with those entities and stuff, and that being scary, or they
yeah.
were trying to make it scary. This was truly scary.
Yeah. I mean, even when Charlie is turned into a puppet and like he's hanging on the wall wrapped up in paper, and you immediately can tell something is not right. Something's not normal. And then the doctor's like, I'm gonna take the weight off and lifts him up and puts him on the ground. And then once he starts unwrapping him, it's this is truly where I was like, okay, I need to turn this off before my kids walk back through the door. Because number one, they're gonna wonder what the heck is going on. And then my wife on the couch behind me was like, "What's going on?" And it's like, yeah, this is. And then you get the Stooky babies with Stooky Sue walking out of the corner, and she's rhyming and British accent, and then the
I would
babies descend from the ceiling.
I would
It's
put that
yeah,
scene up against most, like, anything else in Doctor Who as being one of the scariest things that I've ever seen in Doctor Who.
it's it's disturbing. Puppets are messed up. I'm sorry, puppets are not. They're not cool.
Yeah,
Puppets are
especially
not
when they're
cool.
trying to murder you.
Exactly.
But then we had, the other thing that we skipped over was the puppet show, where he does the
Yes.
little recap of the Doctor and kind of the different companions that the Doctor has had since Donna, and kind of how they
Yes.
all died. I found it very interesting because in my mind, I hadn't really thought of that. Like, oh, this character died. And I'm like, oh, and then the doctor's like, well, no, actually, you
Of old
know,
age.
she died of old age, 'cause she got, you know, transported. And we know kind of Amy, quote unquote, died, but not really. And
Right.
that's how the doctor's thinking too, like she might have died, but not really. Or like Claire died, but not really. She's still living in that last moment. Or Bill's consciousness lives on, or River Song still kind of lives on in that other world or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he's justifying that he didn't actually
Oh
get them
yeah.
killed. But then I love how the toy maker's just like, well, then that's okay, or what, however he says it.
That's fine.
Well, then that's fine. Like I actually like that because it was a nice little recap, and kind of I like it when the doctor gets kind of put in his place a little bit, or gets called out on some of this stuff, how careless he can be with his human friends or companions.
Yeah, I mean it is such, I mean, just to see the representations in puppet forms of the different companions, and Donna's there witnessing all of it. And in the end, Donna asks, like, is that true? Did this really happen? And that's when the doctor, like, he doesn't even answer Donna, right? Like, he just stands up and he's like, I challenge you to a game. Like, seeing the companions, or the recollection of what has happened, that trauma that the doctor
Mm-hmm.
has just kind of like justified over the years, like that is what pushes the doctor to finally, and maybe it was a reckless decision, maybe it wasn't well thought out, but that's what pushes the doctor forward to be like, you know what, we're ending this now, whatever might happen, I challenge you to a game. But yeah, the way that Neil Patrick Harris even delivers the line of, well, that's all right, it's
Yeah.
like major Jim Carrey vibes right there, of just like, well, that's all right. It's great. It's solid.
I liked it a lot. I actually really liked the puppet show. I thought it was a clever way of kind of recapping some of that's happened with the different
Yeah.
doctors and companions. And interesting enough, you had, I guess, he's kind of talking crap on Smith. He's talking crap on Capaldi, but Whitaker didn't really lose a companion. So
No,
good for her.
no. Yeah.
she didn't
All her companions abandoned her.
she didn't get called out. Although I guess maybe oh, what's the very first episode with Jodie Whittaker when what's her name dies?
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
technically a companion, but that was pretty harsh.
yeah. Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, she comes back as the universal frog, right?
The frog, yes, the frog. Um, all right. So where do we go from here?
Who they play the game. The toy maker gives, because as they're playing the game, the toy maker is basically recollecting of coming to the universe. So I came to the universe with such delight. I played them all, Doctor. I toyed with supernovas. I turned galaxies into spinning tops. I gambled with God and made him a jack in the box. I made a jigsaw out of your history. Did you like it? The master was dying and begged for his life in the final game, and he lost. I sealed him for all eternity inside my gold tooth. There's only one player I didn't dare to face, the one who waits.
Okay. See,
That
this is the part I missed on the rewatch because I had to speed it up. But I'm glad that you brought that up because that monologue, you know, that's like a doctor worthy monologue.
Oh, absolutely. And Davies, in the behind the scenes for this episode, Davies makes the call out, and this is what's in the background with Davies' voice overlaid. Davies is like, Neil Patrick Harris, if there ever was an American Doctor Who, an American Doctor Who, Neil Patrick Harris could be the Doctor. And in this moment, it's like, absolutely, because the way that he, number one, throughout the episode, the way that he changes characters, the way that he's changing his voice, the emphasis, the flamboyancy, every aspect of it. But in this monologue alone, as quick as it might be, it's the delivery is like astounding, and it stops you in your tracks because where it ends and what it sets up potentially for the future.
Yes.
It's madness.
Yeah, he drops a couple key things throughout this episode, like I think three things at least that could set
Oh,
up
at
future,
least
because he says, what did he say? The one who waits.
the one who waits. Yep.
Okay, so that's something. So that's something that we will probably see eventually with
And
Shuti
the toy
Gatwa.
maker didn't want to touch it. Toy
Yeah.
maker didn't want to go close to the
So
one who
something
waits.
scarier, but not something he's necessarily aligned with.
Yeah.
And then he mentions the master is
Yep.
in his gold tooth, and we'll get to
Yep.
that because there's some tease
Yep.
about that in the future. And then there's another thing he says at the end. So there's definitely a couple things that they're dropping on us here that we love, right? That's what we loved about
Oh yeah,
um the the one era of Doctor Who where it was like all the threads. And we kind of
yeah,
talked about how much we love that with what was the showrunner
Moffat.
then? Moffat, yeah. So when Moffat was kind of doing that, and we kind of love that, like, oh, he dropped this, and then 5 episodes later there was payoff, that
Yeah,
type of thing. So I like that they're kind of dropping this kind of stuff. That's one of the cool things about Doctor Who that I'm glad it seems like they're continuing to do, is to start to drop these hints for future things to come.
yeah.
All right, we'll talk about some of that at the end, but Toymaker goes back to 2023 because the doctor says, hey, best of three. He runs away. He doesn't want to face the third game, I guess, yet. He goes out there. They go back to unit. They take out the satellite. They think, okay, great. We took out the satellite. That was the problem. Toymaker shows up in a full on dance number.
The Spice Girls, nonetheless.
I mean, this was one of those scenes I'm sure will be you either love it or hate it type of situation with this scene. I kind of didn't mind it, maybe because it was Neil Patrick Harris, maybe because I've seen him do this kind of stuff before. You almost expect it. He did a good job of it. The song was catchy, and it did, like, the action kept going. Like, he's doing the song and the dance number, but at the same time, they're trying to stop him. People are dying. Bullets are turning into rose petals. Like, it
Rose
was a
petals.
whole just thing. And I guess this is the type of scene that if you had to guess if I would like it or not, most people would probably be like, oh, Aaron probably thought that was really dumb. For whatever reason, this didn't bother me, and it
Yeah.
worked. It worked fine.
I loved it because I think, again, if you would have taken this scene totally out of context and just showed it to me in a trailer, I probably would have been like, what the heck are we doing? Like, really, this is what we're gonna do?
It's like, this the
In the
intro to the Tony Awards, or what's
right,
going on
like
here? Yeah.
I have no idea. But in context of where it falls in the show, to me, it just demonstrates who the toy maker is. Like, he's in total control. You can't touch him, and he honestly doesn't give a rip, and he's just here for a good time. Like, he's just having fun. And he knows you cannot do a single darn thing to him. And that's what this dance number is. And I mean, honestly, if you're going to have Neil Patrick Harris in a show, you're gonna do something like this. Like, the dude is the triple threat, right? Like, he can do everything. So you got to take advantage of it.
Yeah. I mean, I could have done without it. Like, if it wasn't in the show where they did a different kind of did that in a different way, I would have been completely fine with it, and maybe actually preferred it to do it a
Uh,
different way. So I wouldn't have necessarily wanted this type of dance number right in the middle of my Doctor Who, but it happened. It worked for whatever reason. I'll go with it. I will say, just overall, since we're talking about Neil Patrick Harris, I mean, great addition. I thought he was great casting. I've seen him in a lot of stuff. Sometimes I feel like he's great. Sometimes I feel like some of his more dramatic roles don't work as well for me. I think he does better with comedy. But I thought he nailed it just across the
oh,
board in this. And I know, like you said, the Davies had kind of mentioned that he could be a great Doctor Who. I agree. Like,
yeah,
I doubt it'll ever happen. But if they did have an American Doctor Who, he would definitely fit the bill. But yeah, I just thought just all the different characters, like, he played the same character throughout. There's like different moments where he's almost playing like a
yeah,
different version that I just was like, I really liked the fact that he was in it, and I liked his performance throughout.
yeah, absolutely. And he, I mean, from the shuffling of the cards, I mean, he is known for his sleight of hand and his magic and the juggling of the balls. It's like they say it in the behind the scenes stuff. Like, this role was made for him.
Mm,
Tennant calls out and behind the scenes stuff that if they couldn't get Neil Patrick Harris, he doesn't have a clue who else could have filled this role. It was like he fit perfectly into what they were trying to do with the toy maker, which is why Davies reached out to him directly. It was like, hey, can you do this? He did a phenomenal job. He really did.
yeah,
It doesn't feel like a wasted character where sometimes it's like, oh, that's all we did with that character is just that. He really carried a lot of weight throughout this episode.
yeah, absolutely. So he ends up on the gun. There's a big giant gun. that's on the balcony of Avengers Tower, and they took out the satellite with it. But but now he's on it, right? Like he's taken
Yeah.
over. He's just gonna start killing people.
Yeah, and Kate runs out of the door and she's like, "Where's my crew? Where's my ground crew? Where's everybody that was out here?" And he's like, they might still be falling." And they actually played sounds, people hitting the ground and glass and
Yeah,
stuff. That was one of the darker moments. Like Stooky Bill and Stooky Sue and the Bobbies, all that stuff. Like that's like scary. This was legitimately dark. Like
yes,
that scene in and of itself was just dark.
yeah. There were a couple. I feel like Doctor Who will go there for sure, and has in the past, in the kind of dark, in like almost the flippant way that people will die.
Yeah.
Like that's something
Yep.
that's always stood out to me with Doctor Who, that they're not willing to kind of shy away from that. Um, the other scene in this one that kind of was that way was the guy that wanted to crash the plane just because he thought it was the right,
Oh
like
yeah.
he could do whatever he wants. So he's like, "Oh, here I come, London. I'm just gonna crash." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like they almost played it like comedy,
Right.
but you're like thinking, "Man, everyone on that plane died, and everyone that he crashed the plane into, the middle of the city,
Yeah.
died." Like,
Yep.
but yeah, Doctor Who will definitely get a little kind of dark humor with some of
Yeah.
the stuff. But
Yeah.
yes,
I
that scene
mean,
did stand out where
wholeheartedly.
he's like, I'm not sure if they, hit the ground yet, or they might still be
Yeah.
falling. However he worded it was very dark. And I that one might have been my favorite portrayal of the toy maker was this when he's on the gun.
Yeah.
That version of him was kind of the scariest, maybe when
Yeah.
he
I
kind of
mean,
got the darkest. He wasn't being silly anymore. He was
no.
just like straight up, just all right. Here's who I really am, and I'm gonna kill you.
Yep. I mean, that's exactly who he was at that
He
point in
felt
time.
pressed,
So
I
yeah.
think, because he was down to the end. He's like, all right, I got one more game against the Doctor. And now I did find it interesting that the Doctor could just, once he wins that last game, down the Doctor's like, all right, this is my prize, and you have to be banished. I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting that he just gets to pick
Yeah.
whatever he wants. You would think there would have been some rule or something that was predetermined, but no, the Doctor just basically, and that's why I say this villain, although seems super powerful, he's so limited because of him having to stick by the rules. It almost makes him not that scary. If you're good at catch, you can beat him.
It makes me want to go back to the celestial toy maker that shows up with the first, right? Because
Yeah.
like what was that situation where up to this point we've been told he didn't really beat him, he just escaped. And in this one, to your point, it's like, okay, so you split a deck of cards. High card wins. Yeah, you lost, but you know that out of best three out of or best two out of three. And then you're like, hey, let's just play catch. And it's a pretty darn intense game of catch, but it is one of those things that if he is bound to the rules and you win, then it's pretty much a closed case. And if you lose, the next person up is just like, I challenge you to a game. Let's play this. I mean, eventually you're going to win. Odds are,
Or
eventually you're going to win.
or how big of a chance is the Doctor taking by facing him? And what if he did lose? And then I would assume the toy maker would have the same prerogative, that the Doctor had. If he won, he could choose the what he wanted to happen. He could have just been like, all right, the Earth now no longer exists, and then
Right.
he just kills everyone. So the Doctor was probably taking a pretty big chance there.
Yeah,
Both of them
true.
were, right? They were both taking a big
True.
chance there because whoever won really had the say in what was going to happen. We're kind of
Yeah.
skipping over the most important thing before the game of catch.
Before the game of
Uh,
catch, before the first game of ball.
there's intensity building with the laser. He's kind of pointing at different people. Who am I going to shoot? Kind of situation, and then he just shoots the Doctor,
Yep.
and that kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, oh, like he just shot the Doctor. There
Yep.
seems like there's a lot of time left in this episode. Doctor's dying and he's starting to regenerate, and I'm starting to get emotional because doctors die. I don't, it's sad. And David Tennant's my
Yeah.
favorite Doctor. Even though he's only been back for a couple episodes, I'm kind of like, oh, this is how he goes. Like he just gets shot. And I was thinking, oh, cool, we're gonna get Ncuti Gatwa earlier than I expected. That's cool. Donna comes out. I'm gonna be with him. I don't care what you say. I'm gonna be with him. And I was like, that's cool. I like that moment. He has a couple lines. What does he say? Oh, he's like, it's time. here we go again, Alonzi. And I'm like, oh wow, he's getting like this moment. He's okay with going because
Yeah.
before he didn't want to go. And now he's saying it's
Yep.
time. Like, oh, we're gonna get this nice moment. I'm getting a little emotional, a little misty eyed. And then it just goes, and then he's like, wait, it stops. Can you guys pull my arms? And it just starts to
Hard
get a little,
stop. Yeah.
and then it's just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Um, this is I did not expect. I think this was a surprise to most. I don't know that this had been spoiled in how the regeneration was going to happen, but for him to be, the whole, him to split,
Yeah.
kind of pull them apart and it split, and then Ncuti was there, but so is David Tennant, and they're still connected and they're talking to each other, and I'm like, what is happening? This is so bizarre. This is not
Yep.
exact.
Yep.
It was almost like you're ruining my like I want to have that moment. Like I want to have that regeneration. You're feeling sad for the doctor, but you're excited for the next. And they just like turned it all on its head.
Yeah, I mean, I have no commentary because you are absolutely right. It is one of those things that there is that buildup and then it's just a hard stop. And you, in that moment, it's nothing but questions and puzzlement, right? Like, although we've only experienced, what is it? Eggleston to Tennant, Tennant to Smith, Smith to Capaldi, Capaldi to Whitaker, Whitaker to Tennant. So like four, four regenerations. And New Who. You still have classic and you still have these expectations of what is supposed to happen and all the emotions tied to it, and then just to have it hard stop, and then from that point forward your mind is just spinning. Um i i was just like, I wasn't turned off by it, okay, I'll say that. I was laughing out loud because I'm like, this is utterly ridiculous based on my expectations, and I have no idea what's going on. And their interplay and how weird it is, and my
Mm-hmm.
wife is freaking out because Ncuti Gatwa is in his underwear at like vast majority of the episode. And why doesn't he have pants on? And the doctor doesn't wear pants now, and all these other questions. But there was something about it though that like it brought a smile to my face, because after all of these years, all of these things that you expect to always be true, they aren't always true. The show can still surprise me. Things can still be different. And I don't 100% know how I feel about that. But on some level, I'm kind of cool with it. I'm kind of cool with having my expectations usurped and still being surprised. I now know why Davies was like, hey, don't be
Don't get
spoiled.
spoiled.
Watch the episode. Don't look at social media. Don't talk to your friends. Just watch the episode. I now understand, because to have this spoiled would have been horrible. And if that happened to you, I am so sorry.
No, I mean, I didn't get
Not
spoiled.
you. I'm just saying
Oh,
anybody in
anyone,
the
yeah.
audience. If that
I
happened to you, I feel
I
terrible.
intentionally, because I was actually, I mean, I was all day gone. I was in the city. I didn't, I had no way of watching it live. And so, or not live, I don't know. I don't even know when it dropped, but I'm assuming it dropped sometime
See, I played my cards just right because I was like, okay, 7 UK time, you're
to,
probably gonna hit like 2 o'clock. So I turned it on at about 3 o'clock and it was ready to go.
okay.
So
I kind of assumed it would be around 2 o'clock if it was dropping at 7 in
yeah.
the UK. So, but I was out. There's no way I could have watched it. I didn't watch it till it's
And
probably like 9 p.m.
yeah.
Eastern time. So there was a good 7 hours between when it went live on Disney Plus and when I watched it. So luckily I didn't stay off my phone per se. Like I was looking at stuff that was unrelated, but if anything popped up that even looked like it kind of was Doctor Who news, I was like, scroll past, don't look at that. So I was completely unspoiled. And I'm glad. You're right. It would have completely probably ruined the whole episode if
Oh,
I had known, because then I just would have been waiting for that moment and not really
yep.
focusing on the rest of the story or the surprise. I agree. You had kind of said something about the interplay between the characters
Yeah.
and that you were laughing. I was in the same way. Like I was like surprised, but at the same time I was like smiling the whole time. Like I like
Yeah.
Shuti Gatwa. I mean, we didn't get a lot of him, but I think I'm gonna like the way he plays the doctor. Like he's very charismatic, he's very confident, kind of what I was hoping. from him. Um, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how much of his character was revealed in this very first episode. But he's almost like, even like that whole we knew he was going to say, "What the hell is going on here?" We had seen it in the trailer, but then we see it in context, and it is kind of cool because he's like, "Oh, yeah," like they're laughing, like, "Hey, I'm me, I'm definitely me," but then he like kind of snaps out of it, like, "Oh wait, by the way, what the hell is going on here?"
Yep.
That was it was a cool introduction to this doctor. Now, how do I feel about the fact that they did this whole split regeneration and now we have two doctors? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it feels like a
Yep.
cop out. Like my instant reaction is it's a cop out because David Tennant is the favorite doctor, I guess, of our era.
Yeah.
And why not keep him on ice? Why not have him still around just in case you need ratings to boost up again,
Yeah.
But kind of Doctor Who's always been about passing the torch. And that's why I think the traditionalist inside of me is kind of like, I love David Tennant, but at the same time, I was ready for him to pass it on. He had already passed it on before. We've had him come back now, the 50th now and the 60th. So now how many more times is he going to come back? Is it just going to be the normal thing now that David Tennant is just always part of Doctor Who and we just never know when he's going to pop up?
Yeah. I mean we've already talked about the potential of, or it looks like they're setting the table for something with Unit, right? Well, now they also have a doctor that essentially lives with Donna, who has his own TARDIS. And it does seem like, okay, so he is always forever going to be in play. I do think though, because one of the kind of the relationship and the communication and the conversation between Gatwa's doctor, the 15th, and the 14th, Tennant, is Gatwa is like, hey, you need to rest. We're doing rehab and out of order. Like there's other stuff going on. It does feel like there is, as weird as it might sound, like a clean break between the doctors that came prior to Gatwa. It's almost like, and what I've been seeing it even described as is like Gatwa's doctor gets a fresh start because all that trauma and all the issues that Tennant's doctor went through, all that history, it stays with him. Gatwa gets like this clean break that none of that stuff touches him. And it's so interesting. It is going to be really interesting to see how this works moving forward. Some people are like, oh, the toy maker play being still at works, it pulled the 15th from the future timeline, and that's what happened here is like the 15th got pulled from a future timeline, and that's why they split, and there wasn't a regeneration. A regeneration will come later, and they'll be merged again at that point. And like there's all sorts of crazy theories out there. All I know is that at this point in time, we have two doctors. We have two doctors in play at any given point in time from this point forward. Does it have to do with Donna and Rose letting go? Like, did that do something? I don't know, but we got two doctors right now. 14th and 15th are still at play.
Yeah. And look what you just said. I was almost getting annoyed by it as you were saying it because you're like everything that came before doesn't touch this doctor. I'm like, what? Isn't that the whole point? Like, isn't that what the doctor is? Like, he is this timeless character who's been through so much, and that's what makes him interesting, right? Like, you want him to have that baggage. You want him to have these villains that he's faced that pop up. Like Ncuti Gatwa comes up against the Daleks. Is it going to be something where he's like, "Oh, look, cool Daleks! Like this is new," or
I don't know if it's going to
like
be.
to me, it's not a clean slate. Like he still had. I get that he's a new way of regeneration, but I would assume he would still have the history, the still.
He's he still has a history and he still has the memories, right? Like there are some exchanges where he still remembers. That
Right.
said, like
I
he
see what you're
doesn't carry
saying.
everything forward, right? He only got the underpants. He didn't get the jeans. So it's like not everything transferred with him.
Yeah, and I guess it's up to interpretation, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, in a lot of ways, it does feel like they're saying, okay, what you knew of Doctor Who has retired. Like it's almost like
Right.
he is retired. That doctor is retired. But now we have this new, more hip, young, fun, appeals to the youth doctor that is coming. And there is a part of me that wonders, will I like that? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I'll give it a shot. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, so like they would have to really, really screw things up for me to turn my back on the character and the story. And I don't think they're going to go there, but there is a part of me that wonders, like, okay, how different is this character going to be, where he won't feel like the Doctor anymore, or can they still have him be young and hip and cool and popular and whatever it seems like they're trying to do with this character, and still have it feel like the Doctor?
I think we might be pleasantly surprised. I really do. Just because even in this episode, although it feels like they are closing, I mean, a chapter, or are they just closing the entire book? It kind of feels like they're closing the entire book and a new book is starting from this point forward. That said, the fact that they called out the fact that like Tennant made some comment about Gatwa being younger, and Gatwa was like, I'm still older.
I'm
Like,
still
get
old.
out of here, kids. Like,
Yeah.
it feels like there are going to be those aspects. And the way that Gatwa was even comforting Tennant, like, hey, you can do this. Like, you can get through this. There is something about his character that it feels like there might be this light, frivolous nature to it based on some of the trailers that we saw. But I also feel like there's going to be more of a depth than what we might have seen
Hmm.
just in the short period of time, just from a couple things, a couple indicators where it seems like there's more than just the goofy surface that we saw or the fun loving surface that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely willing to try new versions of the Doctor. I always feel like there are some connections, no matter which Doctor that we have, there's always like, oh, they're kind of like this, so they're always like that. I felt like Jodie Whittaker was a pretty big departure from kind of what we had gotten previously. Like you could make pretty distinct connections. Eccleston, or yeah, Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, very different characters, but also very similar in a lot of their ways they would act and how they would function, what even like how they would command a room and that type of situation. Jodie Whittaker felt like the biggest departure from that. You still got some of the silliness of like Tennant or of Smith's Doctor with her, but you definitely didn't get. There were things missing that you didn't get with her that we got with previous
Yeah,
Doctors.
yeah, yeah.
And this also feels like they're kind of testing the waters again. Like, hey, let's go further away than we have previously and see what people are willing to accept is the Doctor. And
Yeah.
then if maybe it's not so popular, maybe they kind of like shift back. I don't know. It's interesting to see. It's almost like experimental. We're in the
See,
experimental days of Doctor Who right now.
I'm gonna get kind of like stupid and visual, but like I'm visualizing a high line, a mid line, and a low line, and it's like Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, and Capaldi, like they all would hit like pretty high up, but then they could also go very low. And it's like you got used to the highs and the lows of these doctors. And like different ones would go higher than others and different ones would go lower than others, but they would always go like within certain range. Whitaker never seemed to touch the high in the low lines. Whitaker would always be like more even keel. Like she would have some lightness and she'd have some
Hmm.
lowness, but it was never like the highs and the low lines. I feel like with Gatwa, we already are seeing he could actually touch the high line and he could actually touch the low line. Like he might be closer to what we know of the Doctor than even what Whitaker was with some of her smaller peaks. I don't feel like we ever saw the dramatic swings in personality. I mean, even in this episode, Tennant had some wild swings
Hmm.
in personalities, like in Unit, where he's like, humans are stupid. Like you're always
Yeah.
like this.
Forgot about
Like
that
you're
part. Yeah.
like he had some highs and he had some lows. I feel like that might be the difference though between like where Whitaker charted and even where we're probably going to see Gatwa chart. Like even from the trailers, like you're already seeing that he can chart pretty high. It's just I don't know how low he's going to be able to go on like
All
Like,
right.
does he have
So
that
I
darkness?
feel like we have a couple more things to discuss that happened in the episode, and then we could talk about the future because there are some trailers and clips that are coming. So I feel like we're getting into the territory of
Yeah,
like
sorry.
what's coming. No. That's just I'm on. I did it too. No, but I think let's talk about. So the toy maker, they beat him. The game of catch was what they decided on. So we got to
Game of
see
Catch.
we got to see the 14th and the 15th Doctor team up against the toy maker, throwing the ball around. I will say
Yes.
this is the dumbest part of the episode. This is my least favorite. I thought this was drawn out way too long. I didn't unlike the dance scene where I was kind of like, okay, this is kind of silly, but I can buy it. This I felt like was just very pointless. I didn't get
I
it.
It was predictable. You knew what was going to happen, right? Like the only way that the game of catch could have ended is for the toy maker to not catch the ball. And so it does feel a little bit frivolous. I would encourage you to go watch behind the scenes videos because they're absolutely
I did. I did. I saw the
yeah. It's
them jumping on the mats, and apparently it was
uh
mostly them and not stunt doubles.
right.
Uh, but yeah, I don't
It's
know. Just for me, this scene just felt way too dragged out, and I was like, okay,
yep.
this is kind of a silly way to introduce Ncuti. Was first his first action was a game of catch, but
That's I
uh,
don't disagree. I
but
don't
it
disagree.
ends. They defeat him. That's where we get the moment where he kind of drops the line. What does he say? Oh, my legions are coming.
Yeah.
It's like the last thing he said. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, now he had said before the one who's waiting. And now he says my legions are coming. So now that's dropping like maybe something that we should be thinking about. Like, okay, maybe he's in league with something else. And that's, we maybe see him again. His legions show up, they free him. Who knows? So that's something to think about. And then at the very, very end, we have the golden tooth that he had said he had trapped the master in, if you were paying
Yep.
attention. And then you see this golden tooth sitting on the edge of the building, and someone comes over and picks it up. And the person that picks it up, I think even like, do they laugh?
They had
Was a
red
female
fingernails. Yeah.
hand, most likely.
Yeah. Uh Red fingernails. That's all I'm gonna say. At
Yeah,
this
I
point,
mean,
I don't
not I mean, you can't assume it's a female, but it most
right.
likely was. They were implying.
Right.
Uh so yeah. So we have someone who maybe is going to help the master be freed from the golden tooth. I didn't know the master was
Yeah.
alive, but so yeah, basically they're setting in motion some potential storylines at the end of this, which I like. I'm glad they did because that makes you like excited for the possibilities. If we're getting a master that's going to be going up against Shuti Gatwa, I'm really curious to see who that actor is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think for me, it's just a matter of like, oh, okay, we have a plan for the future. Like we're not just kind of flying by the seat of our pants right now. Like they've already set up three potentially big storylines with the one who waits, the legions, and now the master. It's like, okay, we have 3 seasons
Yeah,
planned out already. Like we're ready to move forward.
I'm way more excited about the potential of those things, and hopefully meaning that that's going to be part of the main Doctor Who story. Less interested in if they're doing a unit spinoff. I honestly could care less. I kind of hope they don't, but if that's what they're working toward, that's fine. But that doesn't really interest me. Uh, and then I guess the 14th Doctor is now retired and living with Donna. Donna kind of makes a comment that um, maybe that's the whole reason that you got that face back is so you could come back and you know be with a
Yep.
family, or I forget how she said it,
Find your way home.
find your way home. So I guess now they're saying Tennant's most meaningful companion was Donna because that's who he ended up with in the end.
I mean,
I mean,
yeah.
they kind of Tennant really, if you really think about it, he's kind of they've really tried to keep him around because I mean, even back when he remember when he ended up having the split version of him, and then that split
Yeah.
version goes and it lives with Rose in another dimension. Like so that version's still out there too. So Tennant's got a couple
There's
doctors running around out there.
yeah.
None of the other actors got that kind of attention.
Yep. I mean that's the line, and I'm trying to find it. Yeah. the funny thing is, I fought all those battles for all those years, and now I know what for. This. I've never been so happy in my life. Like, that's the final line of the 14th Doctor in this episode. The
I
idea
don't
that
buy it.
he
I don't buy it. Like, he's the doctor. You can't tell me he's gonna be happy sitting around having picnics. Like, that's
Oh,
just
he's
not.
not sitting around.
No, I mean, he's
He's
got his
not.
TARDIS.
He's
That was
traveling
enough.
with Rose to Mars.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they snuck off. Yeah, I
He
forgot about
gave the
that.
moles force fields so that Wolf couldn't shoot the moles because he
Yeah,
loves the moles.
it's just a weird ending to me. I think, like I said before, I feel like it's a cop out a bit. It's a way to keep him around just in case we need him. I think I would have preferred if it was more of a definitive, all right, this is, David Tennant came back, he did the thing. Here's why here's why it regenerated in that phase. Something a better explanation than, oh, you needed to find home,
Yeah.
so he had to go find Donna. I don't know. Like, to me, I like Donna, but she never to me was like the companion for David Tennant. Like, that's how it's implied here, I think. I don't know. I'm not sure I loved what they did with this. I think I would have rather maybe him just move on and like they actually have Ncuti be the next doctor and
I I
no
think
fallback
this
plan.
is I
We don't
think
need a
this is
fallback plan.
Davies. I think this is Davies' way of being like, it's done. That doctor is done.
If that
Like
doctor's
I
done, then have him be done. Don't have him
no,
hanging out
because
with.
the doctor doesn't the doctor's never done. The doctor regenerates. The only way you can be done with the doctor is to keep that doctor alive and let another doctor move on. And that's exactly what we've done. He's taking New Who and he's retired it. He's retired New Who. Gatwa's new moving forward. All regeneration is a continuation. That's what regeneration is. And this is not a continuation. It's a hard break.
I disagree.
That is
You and I will disagree on this because he's not. He's not a new. He's still the 15th Doctor. If they wanted to do a reboot, they would have done a reboot. He would be the first Doctor, or they could have done a reboot that had something to do with the Timeless Child.
so
The fact that he's just the next regeneration, they just happen to split him off so you could keep David Tennant around. That's not a new beginning. That's just another
so
Doctor.
okay. So is Eccleston a continuation of classic? Or is Eccleston the start of something new?
No, Eccleston is clearly the start of something new. Now, keep in mind how many years passed between
Right,
the seventh and eighth Doctors, or the eighth and ninth Doctors.
right.
Um, so that's a little different. We're talking like literally one season to the next.
It's a little different, but I'm saying that Davies is trying to do the same thing. Like
Well,
he's trying.
if you're saying they're trying to kind of do a restart or not, see, that's not even the right word. It is a continuation, but it's like a new, like, hey, this is a new era, maybe is the way to put it.
Yeah.
Like a new era
Okay.
of Doctor Who. 100%, I agree. But he's still the 15th Doctor. He's still a
Right.
continuation. Okay.
Yeah. Just the way that Eccleston was the ninth Doctor. That's it's a new era. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like
It is a
to
new
close off
era.
this era, they had to retire the Doctor because all of us would have been like, it's not a new era. Everything's continued. This is their way of signaling to us the era is done. Something new has begun.
It's not effective for me because it has the opposite effect to me because
Yeah.
Tennant is still here. If they wanted that to be gone, then they should have ended it.
So I'm
But
going
they
to blow
didn't.
your mind. From this point forward, Tennant regenerates backwards until he becomes Tom Baker's doctor as the curator.
Is that a theory that's going around out there?
That is
Okay.
a theory that's
You
going
gotta
around.
love the internet theories. Love them. Uh,
uh, yeah,
yeah.
yep, yep,
So,
yep.
yeah, we'll have to disagree on how effective this was because I think by keeping him around, you're still keeping a foot in you're keeping a toe in that world a
Oh,
little bit.
yeah,
Especially if he shows up like in a unit show or if he does the occasional guest appearance because he's still around, then it really will feel like they haven't disconnected yet.
yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about the future because they did give us. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that came in this episode that we missed?
No, no, we're good.
Okay,
I
so we get Christmas trailer. Oh, we did. Well, I guess we didn't talk about the TARDIS splitting. That's another thing I didn't love. Literally, like a
Yep.
mallet that he pulls out and hits it, and it separates the TARDIS. I don't know. To me, like, my goodness, the TARDIS is like it is a character.
Yeah.
Like it is a character in the show, and for them to just like flippantly say, "Oh, we can just duplicate it with this leftover hammer." To me, that was a bit eye rolling uh, of a moment for them to say, "Oh, well, that way David Tennant can still have his TARDIS." Once again, if you're really trying to end him and let him retire, he doesn't need a TARDIS. So like, move on. Let the TARDIS go with Ncuti, and then David doesn't have it anymore.
And he gets the new one.
They
He
want
gets
their
the
cake and they
duplicate.
want to have their cake and eat it too in this situation, and
Yeah.
I felt like they didn't earn it.
That's wait, who gets which one?
Well, Shooties is new because
The
it
jukebox.
had the jukebox. That was the one on the left. So it was the
What?
duplicated one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the one that Shuti gets into
Yeah.
is the duplicated one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Tennant walks into it with him, and then he sees the
Oh
jukebox
yeah.
and
And then he's
mentions
told
it.
to get out.
And then they have the wheelchair access, which was a nice touch. But yeah. So I don't know. That just felt like a cheap moment to me once again. Griping. I'm griping at him. But I'll get over it. And so we get to moving into the future. We get a trailer for the Christmas special, which is coming in a
Yes.
couple weeks, and it's not a very long trailer, but we do get some key scenes. And it looks like the Doctor's entering his party phase.
Yeah.
We get Shuti
He's living it
Gatwa.
up.
He's like straight up clubbing. I think
Yep.
it looks like that's where he meets her, is my guess, or like maybe his first interaction with her. And then later on, you see them kind of flying over rooftops and more traditional Doctor Who stuff going on there. But yeah, it was kind of like, all right, are we getting a Doctor midlife crisis? Like, is this the Doctor? Like, like, man, it's been a long time since I've been able to kind of live it up and just go out and party. And like, he just seems like he just he's not shy to
Yeah.
party, which is definitely not anything I don't think you would have seen the previous 14 versions doing. No matter how much Matt Smith was kind of cool, I'm not seeing Matt Smith around, in a tank top and a kilt
Yeah.
out
Did he
clubbing.
try at a Christmas party one time? Was that Smith or Tennant that tried the Christmas party
Oh, it was definitely
thing?
Smith,
And
but it was still kind of like old man, like, yeah,
oh
you don't know
yeah.
what you're doing. Like you're out of
Right.
place. Whereas Shuti
Yeah.
Gat was like his doctor looked very comfortable and
Yeah.
like he was just hanging out with the youths in
Yep.
this moment. So
Yep.
that definitely is a different version of the doctor than we've seen previously. So
Yeah. It feels like they're going to start to establish again the character, who he is, like even the line as far as like, I'm a time traveler. Time travelers are fun or whatever it comes out in the trailer. It's like they are going to establish these things moving
mm,
forward. And I
yeah.
do think it is the, dare I say, younger audience that they're trying to capture. We are just relics of a forgotten age at this
We,
point. Um,
Yeah, I mean, true, right? Like you gotta
yeah,
shows have to grow, shows have to move on, they have to evolve. We're not the target audience because we're dying, like I mean, we're not that old, but like what I'm saying. Like we're not
yeah,
we're kind of
yep,
hitting the other end of that,
yeah,
that age demographic that a lot of these shows are aiming for. So sure, yeah, we're seeing some of this stuff and might be like, oh, get off my lawn, kind of moments where
yeah.
because I'm not the target audience for some of this, and they are trying to get a younger audience. And I think doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna hate it or that they shouldn't
No,
care what I think. At some point,
right.
that you wanna make all your fans happy, but um, it will be interesting to see kind of where they go with this doctor and kind of what is his personality, what touchstones are there that we can feel as classic. No, we're not classic fans. Are we classic fans now? Like what era are we from? We're not New Who anymore. We're just
Yeah,
yeah, we're of a certain era of Doctor Who, but I guess it's passing on. And what touchstones will be there for us, like the big fans of Tennant and Smith and
yeah,
Capaldi and like that era, like where we can see that in Gatwa and be like, oh, okay, like I remember that, or that, oh, that makes me remember this character. Like I hope they keep that stuff in mind, and it's not just like a complete departure where it's
Yeah.
like, all right, we only care about what the youngins think, and he's just out partying every night. you know?
That's, I mean, there is a part of me that's just like, hey, an RTD I trust. Like,
Yeah,
I trust him to do what is right by the show moving forward. He is responsible for a lot of those things that we love about Doctor Who. In the last three specials, he's already given us a lot of things that we love about Doctor Who and has started to prepare us for some of these things moving forward. He's given us these tidbits that we've already mentioned in this episode. We absolutely love these breadcrumbs that you toss on the floor for us, setting up for what is to come. I think if there's a payoff, I'm willing to allow him to steer the ship and see where it goes. But how crazy is Doctor Who? Where it's like we at one point in time at the start of New Who, we were the ones that classic Whovians were like, oh, do they really understand what's going on? Do what are they doing with our characters? What's going to happen here? And now here we are 10 years later, 12, 15 years later, and we're going through the exact same thing. It's just we don't have that gap, right? We don't
yeah.
have that giant
I was gonna say,
space.
I think that's the difference is the classic fans, their last. I mean, really, you kind of can't even count the Eighth Doctor because that was like a
No.
made for TV movie. Really, like it ended in the 80s. You
Yeah.
know, that's when the Seventh Doctor ended, and the show got canceled in the 80s. Listeners, correct me if I'm not getting my dates wrong, but I think that's right. Uh, and then it came back in 2005.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a new era, but literally the old era was last year, right?
Right. Right. No, absolutely.
Or was last Saturday. Like,
Right.
and the new era starts on Christmas. Like, there's literally a 2 week gap
Right.
between the eras, whereas they had like a, you know, decades gap.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, because it's still so fresh for us, whereas for them, a lot of people probably had moved on, by the time the
Right.
new Who came out, and they were like, not really into this new thing because it's so different. So yeah, it's very fresh for us.
Yeah. Oh, very fresh. Very fresh.
Was there anything? I mean, there wasn't a ton that stood out in I think the character of Ruby. Is that her? Is that her last name or
Yeah.
first name?
It's her first name, Ruby Sunday.
Ruby Sunday. Ruby Sunday seems cool. Like
Yeah.
she kind of reminds me of Rose a little bit. When Rose first got on the TARDIS. So yeah, I mean, she seems cool. He seems cool too. Like the lines that you see with them, they definitely seem like they have good chemistry. So yeah, I think good casting so far.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, nothing about the specific trailer jumps out to you. There's the Goblin song that has been released and
Yes.
has been
Well,
widely touted for the
before
past week.
we get to the Goblin song, they did reveal the Sonic, and that was another thing. Because like I don't know what you thought when you saw the Sonic, but it doesn't look like a Sonic
Oh no.
at all. Like I
No.
know they've gone, they've kind of had different versions of the Sonic. It's kind of like a lightsaber where it's like, yeah, you can have different versions, but they all need to kind of have a standard, template.
Right.
I feel like they've broken the template with this Sonic. It's not even to me. It's like you can't even call that a Sonic screwdriver anymore. I don't know what
Yeah.
you would call
It's a
that. A
remote.
Sonic
I mean, that's what it
iPad. Yeah,
is.
that's what. Yeah, there you go. It's a TV remote.
Yeah. I mean, I prior to them making the announcement about the new Sonic, I was watching the new Christmas movie on Disney Plus called Dashing Through the Snow, which is a hilarious movie. It's probably like a watch one time type of movie starring Ludacris, which is also very
What?
fun. But
I feel like
Ludacris
you're
is in
making
a
this up.
I know, right?
Is this a
It's a
real
kid
thing?
movie with Ludacris. It's awesome.
Okay, did not know that.
But Santa carries something that looks very darn close to the Sonic. So once I saw Ncuti Gatwa with his Sonic, I was like, oh, it looks like Santa's remote to call the reindeer.
Or
Um,
the movie
it
Click,
or the
isn't
movie.
that? Yeah.
There you go. That's it does not it doesn't strike me as a Sonic. That said, I'm not opposed to it. Like there is a part of me that's like I like the Sonic, right? Like I like what you carry, or how it carries around, how it flips out sometimes, like the light on the end of it. I love all those things. I'm not gonna die on the hill though that it has to be a certain way.
But you can like
Am I
it or
kind of
not like it.
bummed? Right. Am
You
I
don't
kind
have
of
to die
bummed?
on a hill, but you can still say you don't like it.
No, Aaron. No, Aaron.
What
It's
do you
yes or
like it or
no.
do you not like it?
I don't know. I'm mad about it. I don't hate it, but I'm also not like that's my Sonic. Like I'm not. It is what it is.
Criticize something, Adam. You can criticize.
I don't like the color scheme, but I do love that it has Gallifreyan symbols around it, and
That
that
was
it's actually
cool.
a proverb
Yeah,
from
I
his
agree.
native tongue. It
I
has
like
cool elements to it.
the proverb is cool too, and I don't know the exact quote, but it's basically the sharpness of the tongue is better than the sharpness of the warrior or something like.
Yeah,
And it's very appropriate to Doctor Who because that's the Doctor is always kind of one with words over brute force in most
yeah.
situations. Uh, yeah, I thought that was cool. I like that they're using the Gallifreyan symbols. I don't know if there's like some kind of alphabet out there that you can like translate. Yeah, I don't think there is, but uh that was cool. But I don't know if I had like my instant reaction to it was like, I don't like it. I wish they had just give him a new Sonic, sure, but like, why did they like?
Yeah.
It's completely different. Thank God they didn't change the TARDIS into like a taxi. Like how different are we going to get?
The
Like, there's gonna be there's things that are Doctor Who, right? Like there are things
right.
that make it Doctor Who, and when you start to like mess with that core stuff, then it's kind of like, wait, you know. So yeah, Sonic, fine. Don't mess with my TARDIS. If he repaints the TARDIS to be green or something, or like changes the TARDIS to be something more modern, I don't
See,
know. Like,
I
where do you stop? You know,
see. I don't think you could ever touch the TARDIS. That is one of those iconic things. Like you see a blue box on anybody's vehicle, and it's like, oh, there's a fellow Whovian. Like though, that is one of those things that I don't think you can. I
agreed.
don't think you could touch.
I don't think they will ever, but
Yeah.
I thought the same thing about a Sonic.
Really? Is a
Sonic
Sonic
is
like
iconic. Like that is the tool of the Doctor. Like it's like I know that hasn't always, and the classic fans might come, oh, he didn't even have a Sonic until blah blah blah. I know, I get it,
see,
but
that's what I was waiting for.
in modern Who, the new
Yes.
Who, Eccleston on the Sonic, I have a couple of them. I put them in my back pocket when I go to Comic Con. I pop the thing out with a button, like it makes the noise.
Yep.
That is a Sonic. It's very recognizable. If you show it to someone that that is one of those symbols of Doctor Who that people recognize.
Yeah.
And that's like I was saying about lightsabers and Jedi and Star Wars. You pull out a lightsaber, even if somebody's never seen that specific lightsaber, they know it's a lightsaber. If you pull out Ncuti Gatwa's Sonic to someone who doesn't know, that's
True.
not a
True.
Sonic,
Right.
right?
Right. They're not going to know what it is.
No,
Um,
it's not. You have taken away the iconography in fine. They can do that. Maybe it's a one-time thing. It goes back to something else, in the future, or maybe this is just something you got to get used to. Happy to roll with it. I roll with stuff all the time with these franchises. They always make decisions, some you like, some you don't.
right.
And I'll roll with it. But if I'm saying if I like it or not, I don't like it. That's, simple as that.
Yeah. I don't like it. Don't not like it. I'll say.
You're middle of
That's
the road. That's fine, Adam. You
I
can be
I
middle of the
am. I
road.
really am. I want to know what the origin is. Like, do we get an actual origin story, or is this something that he's just gonna whip out of his pocket on New Year's or on Christmas? Like, do we actually get to see it made, or does he
Hmm.
just have it from this point forward? That's what I want to know. When does the TARDIS pop it out, or has it already done it? Um, yeah,
Oh, which TARDIS has the stopwatch in?
that thing's gone. You know that
They don't
that
pick
isn't
that
ever
up
coming
again.
back.
Oh man,
No,
that seems
what
like such a
once the Wild Blue Yonder explosion took place inside the TARDIS, that thing was gone. It's out of here. It's never coming back.
yeah, and I kind of think now that I'm thinking about it, the idea of the Doctor retiring and the new era starting, I kind of think they leave that stuff behind. I don't know.
I think we do
Like I
from
know
this
we kind
point
of had
forward.
that conversation on the timeless child, and if that was the Chibnall thing, and they wouldn't really do anything with it moving forward. And I kind of when we got the second episode and they kind of dropped
Yep.
him like thinking about it. But now that, yeah, now that Ncuti's kind of split off from Tennant, that's like it feels like Tennant's beef now. Like that's his thing.
Yeah.
So he may think about it still, but Ncuti Gatwa's probably they may never even bring up the Timeless Child ever again. It'll be interesting to see.
I I think when Davey said I'm not gonna overwrite it or I'm not going to get rid of it, I think he did exactly what he said, and we touched on it. The flux got addressed, all the trauma of Tennant's past got addressed, and now it's done.
Fun.
He held true to Chibnall. He didn't get rid of it. It's there, but he never has to talk about it ever again because that sticks with Tennant. Tennant carries that forward. Chibnall does, or Gatwa doesn't have to worry about it.
Wow. It is kind of crazy how like so much can get set up to be so important, only for the next showrunner to completely change course because that did seem like a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Huh.
That watch, that watch.
Yeah, it's still there somewhere. We'll never see it again. Uh, but yes, the goblins. That so I had seen one of our listeners had posted it on the Facebook page that there was this goblin song. And I
Yep.
clicked on the link and it took me to like a place to download it. And I was like, I'm not gonna it's too much effort. I'm like, I'm not gonna download this so I can listen to it. So I didn't really look at it beyond that, but he had mentioned, I think even in his comment that the song was disturbing or something. And so I so this YouTube video comes out whatever day
Yeah,
it dropped the other day or yesterday or maybe even today. Uh and I watched it. And it's basically the video version, the song. It's a
yeah,
clip from the show of the episode that's coming up. And this is the best look into what we can expect, maybe, because it's a long clip. We get to
yeah.
see special effects, we get to see the CGI, we get to see some of the acting. I mean, it all looked very impressive. Yeah, I don't know, maybe you don't think so, but I
No,
thought
it
some of the
did.
I thought some of the special effects and everything in the specials that they did with Tennant kind of felt a little cheap and hokey. But this was like I felt like I was watching a Harry Potter movie. Like these goblins, like although weird, I mean, it was pretty impressive. Like the effects, some of it seemed practical, but there was definitely a CGI element to it. Um, the song itself aside, I don't know what's going on there. I need more context, but
I don't know
I,
what other context you need. They're gonna eat the baby.
they're gonna eat
That's
the
what they're
baby. Yeah,
doing.
they're salting the baby so they can eat the
They're
baby. And they're
salting the baby.
and the Goblin King, but then they go up on the airship, and I don't know, like it kind of looked cool. I was like, I'm kind of into this. This is kind of very adventure, very Doctor Who,
Yeah.
what you would expect from Doctor Who. Even like I love the part where Ruby's like, or no, the Doctor's like, this is amazing as he's watching them like about to eat the baby, and she's like, it's
Yep.
not, like
Yes. Yep.
he's like, it's not. We need to save the baby. But the
Yeah.
Doctor kind of gets lost sometimes in the spectacle of things and forgets that, oh wait, we probably should stop that goblin from eating
Right.
that baby.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, it was totally different than what I expected. Like this entire time, people have been talking about the Goblin song for like weeks.
Oh really?
And I thought it was gonna be like some goblins, like and then I started seeing them show up with like guitars, and I was like, okay, this is a little bit more. And then when I watched the video and they break out, and I'm like, this is a very well produced song. And the lead goblin has a great voice. The lines and the lyrics aren't all that great, but it was totally different than I expected. It was fun. It's weird though. It is definitely
It's weird.
definitely strange.
It's definitely
Like I
strange, but it was strange like the way that Neil Patrick Harris dancing while people were shooting at him was
yeah.
strange. Like for some things work, and I felt like this in maybe in more context, but I don't know, like I was finding myself entertained by it and kind of like I kind of want to see what happens here. Like, what's
Yeah.
so yeah. So that's our peek into what the Christmas well, we know that the Doctor goes clubbing and that there's goblins that are gonna eat a baby. That's our
They
insight.
run across the roof, they grab a ladder, they go up to the top, and goblins are gonna eat a baby. So
Yeah. And we're gonna one thing that we're talking about all this stuff about the Doctor and things changing and new era. In the end, you have a new audience, right?
yeah.
You still need to explain the basics. You still need to
Yep.
give that intro. You're going to have a new companion in Ruby. She's going to be
Yep.
the kind of the Rose of this era, right? Like the first new companion. He's going to have to explain how he travels through time, where he came from, what's the TARDIS. We get all that stuff again. Do we? Like, how much explanation do we get? Do they leave some things out because they still haven't figured out the timeless child? Like, there's a lot that we're gonna kind of be that's gonna be revealed to us and to Ruby at the same time that maybe will set our expectation for like how much is really changing.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think his explanation of who he is, where he comes from, and why he's not human is going to be very telling very quickly. Is it something that he actually jumps into, or is it something he tries to avoid? Is his clubbing and dancing and partying, is that a way for him to avoid the trauma that we think he left with Tennant? Like, is he trying to distance himself from some of those things? But yeah, we are on the verge of a it's bigger on the inside moment. Like, do we actually get that? Those are the things to look forward to with the new doctor, new traveling person,
Companion.
companion.
Yeah, companion.
That's, it's all there. Yeah, handmaiden. That's what the toy maker called him, right?
Oh yeah.
Handmaiden.
Yeah,
We're not
he
gonna
took
go
it
down
to
that
like the
route,
most yeah, he took it to the lowest common denominator, or like trying to find the
right?
most offensive way of referring to them. But
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh
Cool.
well. Uh I mean, so overall, we had three specials with David Tennant. Did you feel satisfied? Was it worth him coming back? Are you happy with what you got?
Yes. I'm going to align with you though, and I will say it would have probably been more impactful if we would have been able to say goodbye to Tennant. I do feel like at the end of the three episodes, those expectations were this is the last. Like this is the last we see of Tennant, regeneration, it's done. And not to have that happen, although I do think it was fun, I smiled, it was entertaining, confusing, all those other things with how the bi generation took place. I There was something about not having that final goodbye with Tennant that left it like, oh, slightly let down at the end. That said, I think the three stories were fantastic. I think those are three very rewatchable stories, probably the most rewatchable stories we've had in a while. Probably the most well-written stories we've had in a while. Some of the more interesting characters we've had in a while. Neil Patrick Harris was incredible. Yeah, I really liked the past three episodes. Not perfect, but some of the better stories that we've had in some time.
Yeah, I was happy to have him back. It's always good to see David Tennant playing that character again. And I think there was a lot about those episodes I really liked. There were definitely moments I didn't. But I think I liked it more than I didn't. There were definitely, if they had kind of edited certain moments, certain little things like the entities, blowing up to huge size
Right.
and kind of
Yep.
that thing, like certain moments like that were like, or the ball toss at the end of the last episode. There are just certain moments that kind of weren't my favorite, but overall, I thought it was a worthy transition to the new era, new Doctor, and I'm excited to see where they go from here.
Yeah.
And as a David Tennant fan, there is, you know, okay. I don't love the fact they kept him around, but I wouldn't hate to see him back. I wouldn't hate to see him pop in every once in a while. I guess if that's where we're going with it, might as well. Might as well use
Uh,
him.
yeah, yep. Agreed. Agreed.
All right. Well, I think we're good. We'll get it.
Cool.
We'll get this one out there, and then a couple weeks we'll talk about the new Doctor, new companion, and all that.